If I asked you what the best thing to come out of Japan is, would you say RPG Maker horror games? Yeah, I wouldn't either. But RPG Maker Horror might actually be one of my favorite video game genres, and that's despite my 4.5k hours on Apex Legends. I remember downloading some Japanese RPG Maker games on my first ever laptop, and just immersing myself in these pixelated worlds. Seeing the recent surge in popularity of games like Fear and Hunger and Omori, I decided to replay some games that I haven't played in a long time. You've probably heard of some of the more popular games like Aoni, Yumeniki, or Ib, but there's one RPG Maker game that didn't get as much attention outside of Japan, even though it has an official English version available on Steam. Let me introduce Satsuriku no Tenshi, Angels of Death, a psychological horror game released in parts between 2015 and 2016. Angels of Death is a story about a girl called Rachel waking up in a building with no idea how she got there. She meets a guy called Isaac or Zach, and they work together to escape the building. Let's read the Steam page summary. Please kill me. Help me get out of here, and I'll kill you. This dark promise deepens the peculiar bond between two reluctant partners. Where is this place in which they've found themselves trapped? Why have they been imprisoned here? What does fate have in store for them? Thus begins a dangerous and terrifying escape mission from a mysterious sealed building. Episode 1. We start the game with 13-year-old Rachel, or Ray, waking up in an empty room with no idea how she got there. She knows that she was supposed to be at a hospital, receiving therapy after seeing some people get killed. She wants to leave this place and go back to her parents. She gets in the elevator and goes up a level to B6. There's a note on the wall that says each floor has a resident or floor master. To avoid getting killed by the floor master, you need to get away by escaping to another floor. She finds an injured little white bird. Unfortunately, it doesn't last long because it gets sliced in half with a scythe. R.I.P. little birdie. And we get a new character. Enter Zach, a guy wrapped in bandages with a funny laugh sound effect. He is the floormaster of B6. He gives her 3 seconds to run. Rachel hides in a box in one of the rooms and Zach goes away. Then she sews the bird back together with a needle and thread she keeps in her bag. She finds a key inside the bird which opens a door to a room with a switch to turn on the elevator. Good timing, because Zach finds her. But she manages to escape him by going up the elevator to B5. In level B5, Rachel meets a creepy guy dressed like a doctor. He says his name is Dr. Danny, the counselor who was giving her therapy. Rachel doesn't really remember, but goes along with it. He explains that in this building there's a game going on where the floor masters of each level try to catch someone who is the sacrifice. Apparently, Rachel is the current sacrifice. Honestly, I didn't really understand this part. Hopefully the game explains it later. Dr. Danny has an obsession with beautiful eyes. Beautiful eyes, like Rachel's. He only has one working eye, and his other eyeball is fake, with 2 pupils. As he says, his eye color is Alexandrite. He takes Rachel to a surgery room and chains her to a bed and tries to take her eyes. Wow, that escalated pretty quickly. He says something interesting. He says, "Your parents are waiting for you in hell." This triggers a memory for Rachel and she remembers something. Zach barges in and slices Dr. Danny. He tries to do the same to Rachel, but she's frozen in place because of the things she remembered about her parents. Zach says her face is too boring and she should at least try to look like she wants to live. He's not into killing emotionless dolls. Then there's a big announcement that says there's a traitor who left his floor to attack someone from a different floor. It's Zach, of course. So he becomes a sacrifice as well, whatever that means. Zach tries to run to a different floor, but the elevator doesn't open. Rachel goes up to him and she has a favor to ask. Please, kill me. You might think that Zach would gladly kill her, but no. He throws up on the ground and tells her to stop saying disgusting things and to help him open the elevator. After getting a key from the unconscious Dr. Danny, Rachel finds the elevator switch and turns it on. Zach is impressed that Rachel figured out how to open it and promises to grant her wish of death if she helps him get out of the building. So Zach and Rachel leave floor B5 together. Floor B4 has a room filled with graves. Rachel finds a grave with her name on it. She slips into a crack in the wall to figure out how to get out of B4. She finds a love letter by someone who's written that they're in love with a girl and has prepared a gift for her. She also finds a locked door. Zach finds a pickaxe and starts breaking the graves, because of course he does. This scene is really funny, where you just play as Zach breaking all the graves. He finds a switch in one of the graves, which opens the door Rachel found. In the dark area ahead, Rachel finds a document with details about someone called Isaac Foster. Birth date unknown but thought to be around 20 years old. Put in an illegal orphanage as a child. Current whereabouts unknown. Bones of children found in the grounds of the orphanage when it was shut down. The facility managers were found dead, with knife wounds. Isaac Foster is thought to be the culprit of this crime and later serial killings in various areas. She goes back to Zach and tells him she found papers with information about someone called Isaac Foster. He confirms that it's him and asks if she's scared of him, but she says no. Zach says he hates lies, and Rachel stands her ground. She wants him to kill her. Rachel finds notes on the ground with things like, "I know your desire," and "How do you want to be killed?" Lovely. Zach asks her why she doesn't end her life herself if she wants him to kill her so much. She answers that it's because God said not to. So, asking someone to kill her is okay, but doing it herself is not okay? Okay. Zach says if she wants to be killed, she should at least show some emotion. Rachel tries to smile, and even though her eyes are dead, it's not a bad smile. The floormaster of level B4 is Eddie. In one of the rooms behind the cracked wall, Eddie introduces himself to Rachel. He is the one who left her the love letters and made all the graves. He knows everything that happened with her parents and promises to kill her in the way she wants. Zach can't get in the crack in the wall, so he's stuck on the other side, listening to Eddie and Ray. Eddie tries to make Rachel say yes to being killed by him instead of Zach. Zach talks to her from behind the wall, reminding her of their promise. I really like what they did in this scene with the wall disappearing to show that even though they're in different rooms, they made a promise and neither of them are going to break it, right? When Zach finally destroys the wall, Eddie runs away. He's waiting for Rachel in another room and tries to convince her again. He keeps trying to make her change her mind until the very end, when Zach slices him and puts him in the grave he dug for Ray. And that's it for Eddie. They find the switch for the elevator and go up to level B3. And that's the end of episode 1. Wow, what a strange story. I think episode 1 was a good introduction to this story. We're introduced to Rachel, the seemingly emotionless girl who just wants to get out of the building and go back to her parents, but then remembers something and decides she wants to die. There's a lot of mystery to the setting and the characters. What is this building? Why is there an insane resident on each floor who wants to kill her? And where did Zach get that badass scythe? Rachel is an interesting protagonist. She's a young girl who has clearly gone through a lot. Her reaction to remembering the thing with her parents says it all. We don't know why she reacted like this yet, but I'm looking forward to knowing more. How is this game going to develop her character and reveal the details of her past? And what part does Zach play? Zach is a cool character, especially in the original Japanese version of the game where his expressions were more charismatic than in the English translation, where he was just swearing every few sentences. Also, on the topic of translation, making Danny use the word peepers was an interesting choice. In Japanese, he just says eyes. I guess they were trying to make him sound creepy, but it just sounds so funny to me. Danny and Eddie were alright as characters. We didn't get to know them though, so their deaths didn't make me feel anything. At this point in the game, I was really looking forward to seeing more of these two characters, since I was already getting invested in their story. Episode 2. We start episode 2 with Zach and Ray leaving the elevator. They step into a white room with metal bars blocking them from going through. Suddenly, some guns come out of the walls and they get shot at. Thankfully, the person controlling them didn't intend to kill them. An annoying laugh plays over the speakers, and there's a long speech about how Ray and Zach are sinners and need to be judged. Then the gate is opened so Zach and Ray can go through. They find a room with a camera and cards with their names on them. They're instructed to take mug shots. Then they get locked in a creepy room with a big electric chair and an audience of mannequins. Rachel inspects the room for a way out, but she can't find anything. Zach sits in the chair because I guess he's never seen an electric chair before. Rachel tries to warn him, but it's too late. He's shackled in. A screen appears out of the ceiling, and the resident of this floor introduces herself. Kathy, floormaster of B3, and our second character in this game with a funny laugh sound effect. She says some stuff about being the judge of sinners and that Zach is the perfect sinner for her to torture. I don't really like Kathy that much as a character. If you're a Kathy fan, let me know why in the comments. Anyway, she starts the electric chair and Zach almost dies. She keeps electrocuting him while Rachel looks for a way to stop it. Rachel figures out the mannequins control the electricity and cuts their heads off with Zach's scythe. The chair is finally disabled and Zach is freed. Apparently, Kathy hasn't had enough and prepares her next sadistic game, trapping them in a room with poison gas and only supplying one gas mask. They take turns to inspect the room to figure out what to do. This puzzle was kind of long and a bit tedious to be honest, but at least we got to see Zach throw Rachel up into the vent. They eventually find the keycard to get out of the room. But Zach breaks it, trying to push it into the card reader. Kathy is having a great time watching their struggle. She increases the gas in the room to finish them off. Rachel makes a little explosive out of items she found in the room. They squeeze into a safe in the room to hide. It was either this or suffocate to death, okay? I'd probably do the same thing. The poison gas is flammable, so the whole room blows up. Zach and Rachel decide to rest in a hallway, and we cut to a scene with two figures in a dark room talking. Apparently, they're trying to figure out what to do with the body of a child who passed away. They decide to make another child with burn scars, bury it in the yard. After this glimpse into Zach's past, we walk around the building and see people in what look like jail cells, barely alive. Looks like Kathy has been enjoying her little game for a long time. You do some other puzzles and eventually Rachel and Zach arrive on opposite sides of this room with 2 doors. Kathy has prepared 2 syringes for them. If they inject both, the doors will open, but one of them has poison inside. They talk about what to do, but after a while, Zach gets impatient and injects both of them to open the doors so they can get out. But the poison makes him go a bit insane, and we see another flashback of Zach's past. We see that he watched a horror movie as a kid that inspired him to become what he is today. I guess movies and video games do cause violence. He's overcome by the urge to kill Rachel then and there. Rachel says if he really wants to, he can. Zach repeats that he hates lies. Since he promised he will kill her after they escape, he says to her, "Don't let me kill you." A chase sequence starts during which it is totally possible to get killed by Zach and get a game over. But if you survive the chase, Rachel and Zach end up in a white room. Kathy shoots Zach and gives Rachel a gun. She wants them to fight to the death. Then you get the option to shoot and kill Zach or not. If you choose to shoot, you find out that it's an empty gun and you'll get executed by Kathy, resulting in a game over. If you choose not to shoot, Rachel says she will not become a tool to satisfy Kathy's sadism. At this point, Rachel has a scythe pointed at her throat, and Zach is bleeding from his bullet wound. His bloodlust is so intense that he turns the scythe toward himself. He isn't dead yet though. Kathy comes into the room and is not very happy. She tries to kill him herself, but Rachel remembers something. When Kathy is about to kill Zach, Rachel stops her, pulling out a gun from her bag. Rachel shoots her. Then Zach gets up, and let's just say that Kathy ends up in more than one piece. With Kathy gone, they can leave the floor safely and go to B2. In the elevator, they chat for a bit, and Zach commends Rachel for how she handled the situation. When the elevator stops, Zach doesn't move. He's unresponsive. And that's the end of episode 2. Episode 2 didn't give us many answers about the setting or the lore, but we did get some insight into Ray and Zach as characters. They start to work together to make sure their promise comes true. Kathy is doing everything she can to try and make one kill the other, but they both resist. Kathy was alright, but like I said, she's probably my least favourite character. At least the creator put a bit more effort into fleshing out Ray and Zach's characters. These two carry the entire game, and I think that's the point. I especially like Zach as a character. He went from being an enemy in the beginning of episode 1 to working with Ray in episode 2. Zach has killed many people for fun. He enjoys taking the lives of people who are desperate to live, but he manages to stop himself from killing Ray. Maybe part of it is because she doesn't want to live and he only likes killing people who want to live, but I think he also saw that Ray believes in his ability to make his own decisions, and he's not a slave to his impulses. He sees a hopeful future where he and Ray manage to escape this building, and Ray is the person who can help him do that. By the end of episode 2, I was really hoping he wouldn't die. Unlike with the other characters, I'd actually be sad if he did. Episode 3. Episode 3 starts with Rachel dragging the unconscious Zach out of the elevator into a hallway on floor B2. Zach has some serious wounds that are bleeding pretty badly. He comes to for a moment and downplays the severity of it, but soon he falls into a deep sleep. Rachel explores floor B2 to find something to help with his wounds. This floor is designed like a big cathedral. Some of the rooms are filled with pink smoke, and it makes Rachel feel dizzy. After doing some minor puzzles, she comes across a self-playing pipe organ and a book that tells her to confess her sins. Are we going to get another character obsessed with sins and judgment in this game? Suddenly, she's teleported to a big room with beautiful stained glass windows. Rachel is met by the cleric Gray, the resident of this floor. He tells her she will find medicine that might help Zach on Danny's floor. Zach asks her to bring him a knife from his floor, B6. So Rachel and the cleric go down the elevator. But for some reason, they have to get out at every level and find a switch to go down one level again. They can't just go down to the level they want to go to. On B3, you have to play a little mini game to destroy these zombie ghost things. Kathy's corpse is gone, but Ghost Kathy appears for a few seconds. On B4, Eddie's ghost appears. His corpse is gone too. In B5, remember that time Zach threw up on the floor next to the elevator? It comes to life and chases Rachel. This is when I realized something about this game. It feels like a weird dream. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's interesting. Rachel looks for the medicine on B5, but every shelf is empty. She confronts the cleric, but he says it wasn't him who took the medicine. He asks whether she's ever considered that maybe she is the reason for every bad thing that happened in the building. Back in the hallway, Zach is still extremely weak, waiting for Rachel. But it's not Rachel who shows up. It's Dr. Danny. I guess he wasn't dead after all. He asks where Rachel is because even though he almost died, he still wants her eyes. Zach doesn't tell him, but then Danny tries to bargain with him. If he gives him Rachel's eyes, he will give Zach the medicine he needs. Zach says no, and Danny leaves. Yes, go Zach! Rachel finds the room that Zach was living in and takes the knife he asked her to bring and a clean bandage roll. When Gray and Rachel get back to B2, Zach isn't there. Gray tries to blame her again for the unfortunate events that keep happening. Rachel finds Zach in a different area and they get chased by snakes for some reason. Zach defends Rachel, but at this point he's quite severely injured. Like, come on, this man should probably be dead already. He tells Rachel to take the knife and falls asleep again. So it's up to Rachel to find something to help Zach. She meets the cleric again by the pipe organ, and he says he took some medicine from Danny. He blames Rachel for Zach's condition and calls her a witch. There's a trial where the ghosts of the residents give testimony. We get some more lore here. Something about Gray bringing the residents to this building for an experiment, and that people have been acting strangely since Rachel came here. This scene was so strange, I almost thought it was one of Rachel's hallucinations. Maybe it was. It probably was. But whether or not the trial was real, the verdict is burning at the stake. She uses the knife that Zach gave her to cut the ropes and escape. She wakes up next to Gray and realizes that it was a hallucination. I don't know if the fire was an illusion too, but I guess we'll never know. She threatens Gray with the knife and demands he give her the medication. He gives in and shows her where he put it. She takes the medication to Zach and sews his wound closed with the needle and thread she keeps in her embroidery bag. Zach asks her why she's doing so much to help him. She says that it's because Zach is her god. Huh? Maybe it's because the knife he gave her saved her life? They get on the elevator to go to B1. Rachel asks him how he got his burn scars, and we get a glimpse into his sad backstory. Rachel tries to say something, but stops herself. She pretends to forget what she was going to say, and they leave the elevator. Rachel starts getting really scared about Zach going to floor B1 and tells him to wait. Wait, Zach! And that's the end of episode 3. I feel like episode 3 was an attempt at explaining some of the lore of the game. Gray says he was the one who organized the experiment in the buildings. Apparently, the only reason he set it up was because he was curious to see what would happen. He gathered some criminals and killers to be residents of each floor. It kind of makes sense, but I still have so many questions. So, this game is about a girl who is kidnapped and taken to a secret building with killers roaming the levels, all to satisfy some crazy cleric's curiosity? A lot of what Ray sees isn't actually there. It's not always clear what is real and what is a hallucination. Rachel has gone through trauma, and maybe her mind is making up things that aren't there to cope with the stress. I started to think that this game deliberately keeps things vague to make us guess what might be happening. But at this point, I still had some hope that the last episode would tie up some loose ends in the story. We didn't get to see much of Zach in this episode since he's either in severe pain or unconscious, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of Zach in episode 4. Episode 4. Zach enters the room and sees 2 lifeless figures on the couch. Ray tells him not to look and asks him to kill her. She says God does not like liars and people who are unclean, referring to herself. She asks Zach to kill her again before he finds out what she did. She wants him to kill her because he's her god. This idolization can't be healthy. She passes out, and Zach wanders around the room. He finds some papers, but he can't read. Danny locks him out of the room. This guy just shows up at the worst possible times. Zach explores the level, and you have to do this weird dogfight minigame? Random, but okay. There's a very long explanation from Gray about why he brought the people here. The explanation doesn't really explain much. He basically says again that he prepared the building and put killers on each floor to observe them. Zach finds some nameplates which have the same words as what's on the document with Rachel's photo. So he figures out that the word is her name, and he uses the nameplate to unlock her room. There's a TV in the room and a video plays showing Rachel's history. She's with Danny in a counseling session. Danny asks why she sewed her parents together, and she says it's because she wanted a family. We cut to a flashback from Rachel's childhood and see her dysfunctional family life. Her parents are fighting and blaming each other for how strange Rachel is. Rachel found a puppy on the street and she wants to adopt it, but her parents are in no mood to listen. She goes back to it later and it's half dead, so she takes it home and puts it in a box. Then we see the most gory scene in the whole game. She takes a gun she saw her mother hiding in a drawer and runs from her father. He comes into her room and she tells him that the dead dog became her perfect friend. She shoots him and says she wants a perfect family too. She finally has a peaceful, quiet home. You've probably figured out by now that Rachel is the full master of B1. Zack asks Rachel if everyone who comes to B1 gets killed by her, and if she brought him here to do that. I'm so confused by this part, because if Zack dies, she won't be killed by him, and I thought that's the whole reason for literally everything we've seen in this entire game. Danny shows up. Danny points a gun at Zack and makes him make a choice. Either abandon Ray and leave the building alone, or get killed right now. Rachel points a gun at Zack and says she wants him to be her god. Rachel says she thought she needed to die because of what she did. Honestly, I don't think anyone really understands what's going on here. She says she wants to kill Zack and make him hers, like she did her parents. I think she got scared that Zack would abandon her, so she wanted to kill him so he would stay. Of course, he isn't going to be killed by a little girl, and for the first time, she resists. She doesn't want to die. Zack is confused, and so are we. She says she doesn't want to be killed in her current state, so they make the promise again to kill and be killed after they escape the building. I guess she went crazy and was idolizing Zack, but he made her realize he's not the fake person she made up in her head. Rachel talks to Gray on B1 before leaving the building. Even though there's no god to kill her now, she still wants to die because of the guilt. Gray tells her that the exit to the building is on B2, behind the stained glass windows. On the way out, Zack gives her his knife. They escape the burning staircase and finally get out of the building, just in time. In the process, Zack's scythe breaks. Just when they're about to leave the building, Ray gets shot by Danny. He just keeps coming back. Danny says he won't let them fulfill their promise. He's still obsessed with Ray. Danny tries to kill them both, but is stopped by Gray. Gray tells them to leave. Then there's a long conversation between Gray and the half-dead Danny, which didn't add a lot to the story, honestly. Zack carries Rachel outside, and they're surrounded by police who came to investigate the explosion. Zack walks towards the police cars and tells Ray not to forget the promise they made. Time passes, and Rachel is put in a facility where she's getting counseling, and Isaac is sentenced to death. We cut to Rachel getting her therapy, and the therapist says it's a nice night out, so she'll have a nice dream tonight. But before Rachel goes into her room, the therapist tells her about Zack's fate. He's going to be executed. Rachel goes to bed and closes her eyes. But then she hears something outside. Zack appears at the window. He's come to fulfill his promise. Zack says, "If you want to die, stop crying and smile." Angels of Death does a good job at making us curious and interested in the characters and the setting, but then doesn't really give us all the answers in the end. The story is still confusing, and to be honest, I was left with more questions than ever by the game's conclusion. The game definitely has its flaws, but something about the characters and storytelling kept me invested until the very end. It sort of makes us choose for ourselves what the meaning of it all is. This is a game about Zack and Ray. It's a story about two broken people stuck in an environment they don't like, and how they work together to get out of the situation. I liked Rachel and Zack as characters, and seeing the dynamic develop between the two. Rachel is a confusing character. Her motives aren't clear, and she isn't very relatable in the way she handles situations. Her mentality was also pretty illogical. She thinks she needs to die to atone for the things she's done, and sees Zack as a god because he's the one who will kill her. But then, when she realizes Zack isn't a god and he's just a person, she still wants to die. I have a theory about the ending. I think the ending scene was something created by Rachel to cope with the trauma of everything that happened. Rachel never had anyone care for her, and she got a glimpse of it with Zack, so hearing that Zack was going to be executed broke her mind, and she hallucinated the whole ending. Zack never showed up at the window, and Rachel either lived on to grow up without Zack, or she actually jumped out the window. I hope she lived, but we will never know, like a lot of things in this game. I was a bit disappointed that Rachel didn't change her mind on the wanting to die thing, because I was kind of hoping she would find a way to heal from her trauma and live happily ever after. But for some reason, she wants to die even though she figures out that the god she used to believe in wasn't real. It would be really nice to see a remake of this game with new music, art, and maybe cut the dialogue a little bit. I think some of the scenes were unnecessary, like that long trial scene, and the chatting between Gray and Danny at the end went on for way too long. Having said all that, I liked the game overall. I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad I got to experience it. This is probably the longest video I've ever made, but I had a lot of fun making it. If you want to see more, make sure you leave a comment. I love reading comments, so please write something. What did you think of Angels of Death? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!